Hey guys, Survival here. Today, I thought I'd do a quick video for all of us who are into prepping. What you see in front of you may not look like much, but this is a prepper's best friend. In the 3 jars that you can see, I have all the worthwhile parts and things that I thought were best to keep from 15 devices I had around my house that died, burnt out, or just straight up quit working one way or another. Now I know a lot of you are thinking, only older devices, which are usually well made, contain a lot of parts. However, my experience has shown that even modern office equipment and some of your slightly more expensive devices, such as routers, DVD players, VHS players, old VCRs, fax machines, printers, even some of the NAS units. When they die, open them up, strip them for parts. It's extremely handy and you never know when you'll actually need any of those parts. This is a selection of parts that I've got in this first jar. So, I've got a gear in decent condition. This was a paper guide from an old adding machine. Got some other various aligners, wheels. This is a rubberized wheel that helped provide some friction so the paper would actually feed properly. A small mirrored surface which was used with a laser. That was from a laser printer's laser head array, which I pulled apart. There are complex springs like this one, where it was used to hold certain parts together to minimize vibration and to ensure a tight fit. In this middle jar, I have a rubberized foot from an old NAS that I had. The middle simply pushes out. As you can see, there's a slight gap there. You pull that central part out, you push it through, then you reinsert the central part, and it holds the foot in place on the device. There's a precision roller shaft which I pulled out of an old floppy disk drive, and here on the corner 2 small neodymium magnets which I've left attached to part of a hard drive arm from a very old hard drive that I found, and it no longer worked, so I thought, pull it apart. One of the other things I got, this was from an old NAS of mine, is a USB power header. So female USB at the front to USB power. As you can see here from the 3rd jar, I have an assortment of screws, other connectors, washers, and in here I do have, if I can find it, a whole bunch of standoffs. These standoffs were from motherboards and some from daughter boards. They're a Phillips head type, but they are completely threaded on the inside. I also salvaged a little rubberized flap which can be used to cover very small 1.5 or 2.5 mil ports, usually used for flashing firmware across. I've got some precision bolts and nuts and screws with extremely fine threads, beautifully smoothed domed top head on it, and this has allowed me to build an amazing collection of extremely small machine screws like this one here, and some that are even smaller. As you can see here, this is a coffee jar. There's a lot of screws there. There's a few washers. There's some circlips, as you can see, like that. Some C-clips. I got all of these from a total of 15 devices. However, I got the bulk of these out of one old laser printer which died, so I figured, hey, let's pull it apart. On average, devices such as old computers, routers, DVD players and the likes will usually give you approximately 30 to 40 worthwhile parts. These could be motor couplings where they have motors running small parts, such as the drive system on a trace ejector mechanism, precision shafts, and primarily screws. There are a very large quantity of devices that still get assembled with screws. This is mostly due to it being an affordable and reliable method of production. Whilst a lot of devices are assembled with clips or tabs made to fit together, or are, for example, plastic welded, where they use some molten plastic to glue two plastic bits together, this is still not seen as acceptable for a lot of your higher ticket, your more expensive items. And I've personally noted a lot of devices coming out of factories located usually in China and throughout other parts of Asia are still assembled with screws, which is a really wonderful thing. It makes opening the product easier when something goes wrong, allowing for the possibility of repair. And in cases where repair isn't possible, it allows us to salvage a whole bunch of parts. I have also obtained a whole bunch of springs from the devices I've pulled apart. To keep in mind, you will end up with a lot of springs. On average, a laser printer will have about 15 springs. It'll also have a whole bunch of large, usually ABS gears. For example, this gear, completely ABS plastic, pulled it out of a laser printer. I also pulled some really huge ones out. Can't find them at the moment, but the primary mechanism that operates toners and feeds paper in most modern laser printers are all beautiful heavy-duty ABS gears. As you can see here, there are some other gears such as this one here, which is a primary feed operator gear. What this gear did was it operated the primary feed from the printer's tray, which went over to the pickup roller, which pulled the paper up out of a tray. Got a whole bunch of different headers, which makes great wire for when you're working on small projects, very low voltage, 1.5 to 3 volt electronics. I've got plenty of wire suitable for it. And I found a small spring jar of mine. This is a new one I'm working on building a collection of. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of springs in here. These are primarily from some toners which ran out, but I figured, hey, it's got some really good springs on it that I'm likely to use. I want to keep them. And from a whole bunch of other devices that died recently. Another thing to keep in mind, here are some parts from some other devices I pulled apart. So I mentioned there was a NAS I pulled apart. I found this mount. I found a couple of them inside that acted as a heatsink and a mount for cooling. You get a whole bunch of these little rectangular belts. They're a rectangular cross section. They're not a V-belt. However, they work really well. Get some of these wire ribbons. So if you can be bothered hooking them up, or if you need to replace an identical width ribbon, well, they're always handy to have. There are other connectors and clips that could come in handy on other projects. And one of the best sources of springs that I've ever found, pens. When they run out of ink, pull them apart, grab out the spring. For this pen here, all you need to do is unscrew the end, pull the ink cartridge out, take the spring off, good to go. That's all that matters. You get this lovely little spring. Very handy to have, very easily overlooked. If you take these springs out of every pen that you're able to, you'll have a very nice collection of very good quality springs that can come in very handy at your disposal. So, as you can see, it is extremely worthwhile to strip devices for any and all useful parts when the device quits working. Whatever's left over, you can recycle. Plastic, metal, circuit boards, these can all be recycled. Simply check with your local council or other authorities for details of recycling centres, and you'll be able to easily recycle of any remaining parts. Remember, these parts don't take much space. Keep a few jars, for example. Over here you can see a coffee jar, and they were a couple of jam jars. Fill them wisely, fill gaps, chuck them in the back of a cupboard somewhere. Don't forget about them, and you have a whole bunch of parts at your disposal should you need them. If you'd rather not keep larger parts, I strongly advise that you at least keep the screws and any nuts and bolts, washers, C-clips and the like, because you never know when you'll need them. And as I've said before, I'll say again, it's better to have and not need than need and not have. And a jar doesn't take much space. That jar there will easily hold over 1,000 very small screws. And when I say very small, I mean very small. I have some there which are 0.5 millimeter in diameter and are only 2 millimeters long. A little bit of time spent taking the parts off is definitely worth it in the long run. I know it's helped me out many a time over. I've been needing to find a part, say a missing screw I need a replacement for. I've pulled these jars out, sorted through them, found exactly the part I was looking for, chucked it in, good to go, good as new. And remember, stay safe in the bush.